All right. The Earl Was Wrong, Chapter 1. London, late February 1815. Sebastian Albert Grey, the 6th Earl of Greydon, should have expected to find his sister in a torrid embrace. He should have anticipated having to stride across the shadowy room to tear her from her lover's arm. And he certainly should have known that Lord Anthony, the third married son of a bloody duke, would cower against the wall. "Go," he said, dismissing Lord Anthony with a single word. Lord Anthony did not move. "Go," Sebastian said, louder this time, as he took an infinitesimal step forward. Lord Anthony, shaken from his stupor, darted a quick glance of longing at Belinda and fled the private sitting room. Sebastian released a breath. This scene had become all too familiar. In the past month, he had caught his sister in compromising situations with 3 different men. He expected such behavior from their mother, but not from his younger sister. "Let's go," he said quietly, holding out his arm. Instead of taking it, Belinda stood frozen, her face devoid of expression. "Belinda," he said sharply, his temper hanging by a thread. He wanted to shout at her, to break through the wall she hid behind, but he could not risk attracting the attention of the other guests who were gathered in the public rooms at the front of the house. With a slight tip of her chin, she reached out and laid her palm on the crook of his elbow. They swept from the room without another word. He wished he could slink out a side door, bundle Belinda into their carriage, and head for home. Unfortunately, if they disappeared, everyone would wonder why. Sneaking out of a soiree was a sure way to invite question, so they had to return to the drawing room and hope they had not been missed. Thankfully, Belinda's flushed cheeks were the only sign she had been engaging in an illicit encounter. Nearly an hour later, Sebastian followed his mother and sister into the carriage. His mother stared out the window into the darkness, but Belinda looked directly at him. Seeing her green eyes, so like his own, narrowed in a glare, only increased desire. It was not unreasonable to expect his unmarried sister to avoid married men. The rain clattered loudly against the roof as the carriage started to roll forward. "One more time, and you will marry." His voice sounded cold, emotionless. It was the opposite of how he felt. Belinda didn't flinch at the threat of marriage. Her gaze didn't even flicker. Was it because she didn't think he would force her to marry, or because she intended to refuse? He had ignored her when she told him she did not want to go to London, because he had thought her hesitation was nothing more than nerves. He had obviously been. Was she trying to get him to send her back to Greydon Hall? Did she miss Edward, Jane, and Louisa? Or was it something else? "Lord Anthony is already married. His wife prefers the country," she said, twirling one of the dark curls that framed her face. "And he prefers innocent debutante?" She smirked. "Not that innocent. Belinda," his voice held all the warning he could muster, "you could be ruined." He sounded like an overprotective mom. He didn't care. Men could stumble through life without making wise choices and still be tolerated, but women were not so lucky. She ignored his warning. "I was feeling a trifle faint. Lord Anthony offered to lead me to fresher air." "And he thought to offer you fresher air by using his lips?" "It was just a kiss." "It won't be just a kiss if someone sees you." Was she really so naive? Belinda dismissed his concern with a shrug. "I won't be horrid. I've caught you 3 times. You hardly count. You will not spread gossip," she paused. "If you stop following me, you will stop catching me. I am exceedingly discreet." Her indignation was unfair, for no matter how discreet she might be, she could be discovered at any time. Everyone knew a lady was only as good as her reputation. "I'm not following you. I'm looking out for your best interests. Eventually, someone will see you." It was a miracle no one had discovered her already. "Even if you avoid detection, Lord Anthony, Lord Somers, or Mr. Sims will brag to one of their mates. Girls are ruined every day." She laughed. It was not a tinkling sound that was supposed to come from the mouth of a debutante. Oh no, this was a laugh that proclaimed him a fool. A fool who had assumed he knew his sister, even though he had not seen her in the last 10 years. The decade apart had changed her, just like it had changed him. His plan to have her happily married by the end of the season seemed impossible now that she was in London. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw his mother smile. He braced himself. He had long since given up expecting proper behavior from her. He knew she did not see anything wrong with kissing relative strangers. Every time she left his siblings in the country and popped up in London, she was linked with a man. As she aged, the men only seemed to get younger. Whether she was searching for another husband or simply reveling in her freedom, he had no idea. He did not want to know. "A kiss is nothing," she declared airily. "I kissed a men teaching before I settled on father." Arguing with her was an utter waste of time. However, he couldn't stop himself from saying, "If that is true, you are lucky you weren't forced to marry some other gentleman." The Countess smiled again. "Your father and I married for love." He grimaced. He knew all about his parents. Everyone knew. Even 27 years later, the scandalous love match between an earl and a penniless girl was a story retold in whispers just loud enough to be overheard. It would have been romantic if they had been less demonstrative, or able to care about anything except each other. Instead, they had flaunted their love and ignored him. Belinda shall have the option to marry for love, too, as long as she stops luring gentlemen into tyrants. Even though Sebastian did not know her reasons, he had given up hope that his sister was not the instigator. "Really, dear brother, your time as earl had made you prone to dramatics." "I am not being dramatic," he said stiffly. When she was young, she had often begged him to twirl about the nursery with her. She had talked non-stop about her triumphant debut. What had happened to change her mind? He wished she would talk to him, but he only seemed able to invoke her anger. He knew why she was angry. He had abandoned her and the rest of his siblings when he inherited the estate at 16. He had left for London with their uncle Lord Blanche in a desperate attempt to learn how to be earl so he could restore the estate's finances and reputation. He had succeeded in becoming a respectable lord, but the separation had cost him his family. For the past 10 years, he had done what he needed to do. His siblings did not know that the estate had been in shambles, riddled with debt, or that their father had left nothing but ruin. They did not need to know. When he had turned 18, he had become their guardian in addition to being their brother. He had an obligation to protect them. "You worry too much," Belinda declared, as if her 21 years gave her vast insight into the human psyche he simply could not comprehend. He clenched his jaw. "If I catch you again, I will be the one to choose your husband." She did nothing save raise one taunting eyebrow. "I'd like to see you force me." "Belinda," he groaned in frustration. Even though he threatened it, he would never force her. "I don't want to force you. I want you to choose." "You do not." "I want to see you happy." "No, you don't. If you wanted to see me happy, you would stop me around." She paused. "And you would have left me at Greydom." "You can't stay at Greydom forever. Do you want to end up a spinster?" She shrugged, one elegant shoulder rising and dropping. He wanted to support her, but he didn't know how. He unclenched it. "What do you want?" he asked softly. Her mouth settled into an expressionless line as the carriage came to an abrupt stop. Without acknowledging his question, she climbed out and disappeared into the house.